This is Civil Rights Video 8, kind of focusing on the last piece of the movement up to today, 1975 to 2019. So what were some of the gains of the movement that really rolled back in the decades that follow? Things got worse in some cases, because history is not always just progress. You got to keep fighting. And activists were not just fighting for legal rights, but also political power, social equality, and economic opportunities. So yeah, they had those legal rights, and then they had to fight to use them. And they wanted political power. They wanted to have black leadership. And they wanted to have social equality and social recognition and really dismantle white supremacy, but also really establish more economic opportunity so the disparity between black wealth and white wealth wasn't so huge. And so some argued that the movement had succeeded in passing laws for equality, great, and that civil rights issues were no longer relevant. Programs developed to address economic injustice, like social services and programs to counter racism and discrimination in education and higher practices, were diminished. And so these goals of really helping the black community have been rolled back. The movement challenged the racism that prevented black access to politics, to education, and good jobs. It made possible for more black people to join the middle class and rise up economically. African Americans began attending college and finding employment in the public and the private sectors at much higher rates. So they're getting jobs. They are improving, but there's still ways to go. African Americans were able to occupy positions of power, from corporate boardrooms to prestigious universities and even to the White House. The movement inspired legislation that helps prevent civil rights abuses to this day. The 1964 Civil Rights Act and the 1965 Voting Rights Act created federal legal standards that protects the constitutional rights of all citizens. So there was clear advancement. But there's more to fight. Despite many victories, the movement did not end racism or racial inequality, that there's still ways to go. For example, today, 27% of black people live in poverty. That is double the white rate. In Mississippi, as kind of our main test case, 45% of black families live under the poverty line, really considered poor. Legacies of Jim Crow and historical discrimination remain. We're still cleaning up. The movement eliminated legal segregation, but neighborhoods and schools remain largely segregated, and that it's going to take time, it's going to take work. We can't just sit back on this. School systems with majority black populations are often underfunded to this day. If you go to any city, there are still black areas and white areas, and these are all legacies of past laws that's going to take decades to fix. And this is kind of an example of the idea of redlining, where black families were only allowed to go to the poor neighborhoods and were allowed to buy a fancy house. And that has resulted in segregation that we're still working on. And you can see this in just about any major city in the country, where you'll see black communities and white communities with clear separation. The justice system is a mess. We need work. African Americans are disproportionately affected by the criminal justice system. One in 3 black males will go to prison in their lifetime today, compared to 1 in 17 white males. In Mississippi, 75% of all state prisoners are black. These disparities are caused by a variety of factors, including high rates of crime in poor communities. If they are stuck in poor communities, there are higher rates there. And racial discrimination in the criminal justice system. People of color are more likely to be stopped by police than whites. And this is all adding up to a higher incarceration rate for black men. Other challenges. One of the latest ones in the news has been voter ID laws. 1965 Voting Rights Act banned voter discrimination, but there are other ways to get around that. And African Americans continue to have difficulty voting. Recently, voter ID laws make it impossible for people without an ID, a photo ID, to vote. And so it doesn't sound racist on its face until you look at the issues of poverty, and that poor people are less likely to have a photo ID. And so this will disproportionately affect the black community. Blacks are twice as likely as whites to lack photo ID. Defenders that want more photo ID laws say this is just a way to protect elections. Critics see this as an attempt to reduce the political power of the black vote. The age of lynching is over, but people of color are continuing to face racial discrimination and racial violence. We still got a ways to go. Hey, progress just doesn't make itself. The fight has to keep going. We'll stop there.